All right, welcome everyone. Today's video, we're going to be over the exclusive right to buy for real estate. This is going to be for the new 2026 documents. There's not a lot of changes in this one, so this should be a pretty short video. As I promised in the other videos, we are going to just kind of start from Bold Trail at the front end. This is not a Bold Trail training, more than it is just to show you kind of what I've learned as far as I've gone through and had some, habits set in about how I'm getting into these transactions on the back side of things. So if you need some more Bold training help over and above what I'm showing you here, there's definitely different videos out there for that through Bold Trail. I won't be creating any training videos as they've got their own that are pretty robust. So let's dive in. Exclusive right to buy 2026. Go ahead and log in. You can log in both ways through the back office, which is where all the transactions lie. I personally have gotten into the habit of, just getting into my CRM because that's where all the people are housed. I think that's where the majority of people probably listening to this are going to have this kind of tab pulled open on their desktop, probably at all times, or that would be a good suggestion. So we're going to log into the CRM view. Apologize. And so anyways, we're all logged in. Like I said, this is where you're going to see all your contacts, all the different things, very similar from coming off of Keller Williams Command. But to get to the back office is kind of a separate portal, if you will. There's a couple different ways to get there. My habit has been searching on the search bar, looking for My Products Bold Trail back office. If you don't see it in the search bar, just type in back office and it should pop up in your feed. If it doesn't, please reach out and let us know if you don't see that it's owned or it's part of your product. So click on that. You'll notice it'll open up a new tab. And this is kind of like your transaction overview. Please don't mind all these transactions in here. This is just my admin setup. So you'll only ever see your transaction files in there. So if you don't see anything in there yet, it's just because you haven't had that deal come through, but no sweat if it looks blank. So in order to create a transaction, there's a couple different ways to do it. I like big, easy buttons. Let's click on Create Transaction. We are working with a buyer right now. And since we're working with a buyer, we won't know exactly what the property address is. So let's just create new instead of looking for any sort of property in the MLS. I think that's going to be more applicable for the folks that are writing a contract and kind of going that route. So we are creating a new buyer. I do have a couple of different dummy names in here, so bear with me if there's some things that pop up. But we're looking at transaction type. I'm looking at a traditional sale. If you are looking at any of these other types of sales, please reach out to me as there's probably some nuances we probably need to go over. So traditional sale is just fine. Status. So this would be an opportunity, right? This would be a buyer who's not necessarily actively looking at houses, or they shouldn't be because I haven't signed with them yet. So they're more of an opportunity type of lead right now because I'm hoping that we can get this exclusive right to buy executed so we can start representing them and then actively working with that client. So opportunity for now in my world, representing the buyer on this side of things. And if you'll notice, when you select buyer, there's only one required field here. If you click seller, you're going to have different required fields. So just bear with these drop downs as you get used to the system. I know sometimes it might not look exactly what you thought it would look like, and it's sometimes just because of a little drop down issue. We don't have an address. What kind of transaction name would I be looking for when it comes to a buyer? I think what you want to do is get into the habit of things. My habit traditionally is going to be the buyer's name. So I'm going to use Blake Smith in this case. But if I had Blake and Susie Smith or you name it, I might spell all of that out. And then I might just say buyer. From there, you can definitely fill out other things that that might be applicable in your business or with that buyer. For the sake of this video, again, I'm not trying to turn this into a full-on Bold Trail training. More than anything, let's get to that contract. So fill out what you need. I'm not going to do it for the sake of time. We're going to click next. Obviously, you'd be able to fill out your commission, probably not the whole total because you're not under contract or anything, but this would be the commission that you're charging your buyer in the exclusive right to buy. From there, you're going to be able to find the actual contact. So I should have Blake Smith in here. If you don't see your contact in there from your CRM, you can always type out their name and click on Create New. But if you obviously have them in your CRM, you're going to be able to click on their name here. If you need another buyer, add there, so on and so forth. All right, now type of checklist, right? We did a traditional sale, but now we got to figure out what kind of document checklist is going to populate. I just want to note in every video I make that when you're looking for the referral checklist, it's not a transaction type. I know that our brains, and my brain absolutely thinks that, you know, naming a transaction type of referral is kind of the transaction type. It's not necessarily for that. So if your referral is going to be doing a traditional transaction, you select that. And then if you do have referral partner working your deal, you're going to go ahead and click on referral here. But since that's not the video we're creating, let's go up here to buyer residential. And then listing date. This is obviously, you know, not a listing. I know that sometimes in our world of real estate, we see listing and we think the selling side, or you know, selling a property. This is actually you're enlisting your buyer to work with you, and so you're going to put the date of which your exclusive right to buy should be being worked on, should be you know, being executed. So I'm just going to hypothetically say that today I'm going to be working on a new buyer. So I'm going to put today's date, put continue. And then that's going to pull open this page here. Now you'll notice that all those little blanks that I told you about shouldn't be blank for you. You should be able to kind of, you know, have a little bit more information here. But I'm looking for the document. So we're going to go over here to assets under documents, and this is going to bring over my document checklist. You're going to notice a few things here: use forms or upload. If the office already has this document ready to you know, populate for you, it's going to say use forms. So we are looking at the exclusive right to buy. Use forms just simply means I want to pull open what the office has provided that already has all of the fields ready to be you know, filled out and entered. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep that one in there. If you do have something else that you're adding, you can add it here. But the office does have one already ready for you. If you click next, obviously you want to make sure you have all of the different signers and buyers in there. Exclusive right to buy. I, as the broker, would be signing, and then my buyer, Blake Smith, would be. So since there's not two buyers, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Yes, delete the signer fields for that person. I don't need a sign-in order. If you guys feel that you need to, you can have that option here. But I'm just going to go ahead and click on myself as the broker, make sure my buyer's up there, and click next. And now this should pull open the document. And what I want to note, right, or what I want you to note right now is that the reason why I'm creating this video is because we did update a lot of our documents between 2025 and 2026. So you'll notice one of the first changes is this box here. It used to not have this big bold letter stuff in here, but this is showing you that it's the 2026 document. This is approved by the Colorado Real Estate Commission, or CREC. I like to use acronyms in this world. And so every time that I'm looking at creating a video for a document, it's something that the CREC has put out, because remember, our license only covers limited law or limited licensee, a limited license type of structure for the Colorado approved documents and any documents that our attorney has done. So if you're filling out documents that doesn't have this up top, you need to probably pause and ask yourself if this is an applicable document that you can interpret and fill out. So with any other questions on that, just give me a call. Let's get into it. So as I mentioned, this is the exclusive right to buy. You have two different ways that you can select things or fill out things. And so when I fill this out, I'm going to fill this out into what I would call the most normal way of filling it out. And I think for the majority of the people on this call, you're going to be a buyer's agent well over 90% of the time. So I'm going to select that. If you're going to be a transaction broker, you're probably going to be giving myself or Joanna a call at our office to figure out exactly what type of nuance you're getting yourself into in order for yourself to be a transaction broker and not a buyer's agency. So most likely you'll be working with your buyer as a buyer's agent. You're going to select the date as the date that you're filling this out. You also could put the date up here for the date that you're meeting with the buyer. So say you're just getting this file ready for a buyer's consult with this buyer on the 23rd. It's okay to put the 23rd on there because it's really not going to be executed before that date. So here's one of the rule of thumbs. You never want this date to be later than the date that it's executed. So if I put the 23rd on here, I wouldn't want to have my buyer sign that between now and Thursday, because then it would look kind of odd that the date would be the 23rd, but the signature's timestamp might be the 20th or the 21st. So today's date is perfectly fine, or the date that you're meeting with the buyer. So when I fill out this, I'm going to go ahead and put those types of things in for the template. All right. There's going to be some sections that we're not going to go over in detail. I really want you to know that this is a video for filling this out. I've already taken so much time in going through that bold trail and how to get here. So if you do find that you don't understand a clause that we're not going to necessarily talk about today for today's purposes, reach out to me. One of the best things that I ever did for myself was learn these contracts like the back of my hand. It in a way is probably how I guess I grew my love for being a broker for the office and knowing all of these compliance details. I feel like, knowledge is power in this entire world, and knowing these contracts, I can't stress it enough, really will set you up for success in this industry. So I digress. We're just not going to go over every single, clause. We are with First Realty and Associates, which is our broker name. So we're a multiple person firm. Down here, I'm just going to, again, put some things in for the template sake of things. So buyer, I'm going to say, use what is on their driver's license. And I think there's a couple different ways, let me type this out. And I think there is a few things we want to talk about when it comes to use what is on their driver's license. Some people use their middle name as kind of what they go by in life, and sometimes you think it's their first name. That's a good example. Another thing that you might find is that somebody has a very common name, such as Blake Smith, right? Blake Smith is probably a prominent name in America, and so you probably will need to use their middle initial or middle name. The other thing that you can do is, or use what the lender needs you to use. So if a buyer's coming to you already pre-approved, figure out how that buyer was pre-approved and what name the lender was using. That's probably a safe bet to use as well. Like I said, we are with First Realty and Associates. So put the broker's name. Broker, put your name. So I know it says broker, don't put my name. I'm the broker for the office, but you are the designated associate broker for the file. So go ahead and put your name. Property, this is very important. Do not put TBD. I know that there are some people in the world of real estate sector that still use TBD. That is an older, way of doing it. Our advice is use what our attorney suggests, and our attorney suggests any real property in the state of Colorado. That's a pretty easy blanketed way of saying, hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, no matter what you end up deciding to look at, I can help you. So you can get specific, though. I think this is the easiest way to stay kind of on that neutral side. If you start putting in here that, the buyer's looking for a condo, well, what happens if they want to go find a townhome? Does that comply? I mean, I would think so, but you didn't spell out townhome, because there is a real difference between a condo and a townhome. So on and so forth with cities. If you say that I'm only looking for something in Boulder County and they end up starting to look in, Frederick, Firestone, Dacono, your exclusive right to buy is technically not correct. So you can go specific with this area, but I would keep it vague in all regards to the buyer search. Buyers definitely change their mind sometimes, just with different things that come up in their search. So any real property in the state of Colorado is kind of a best practice. When it comes to leasing properties, I would encourage you not to help a buyer with a lease unless you have some experience around that. So this is one of those clauses that we're going to skip over, because if you are working with a buyer on a lease, I hope you have some commercial experiences. And if you're working with a buyer on finding a rental, then you need to know some other types of rules and regulations in the rental world. So you're going to be giving me a call. So let's skip over this. Let's go on to listing period. Remember at the beginning of my video when I looked at Bold Trail and I saw the words listing period? This is what I'm talking about. You see, I'm working with a buyer. Even though I'm not listing a property for sale on the open market, I'm enlisting my buyer to work with me, and I have a loyalty to them and a fiduciary duty, as we'll see down in section 5 and 6. But when it comes to the listing period, all contracts need a period of time that you're working with somebody. So today's date is perfectly applicable, or you can do what you put in up here. So if I'm going to be meeting with the buyer, on Thursday, I'm going to probably put in that date. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, as this should be the same as what you put in down here, or there around, I should say. All right. When it comes to the ending date, I personally wouldn't. I don't like to work with a buyer for only 3 months. You know, if a contract can take anywhere from 30 to 45 days, that's already kind of half of the time period. So for me, it's usually a 6 to 12 month timeline. But you got to make sure you use a hard date, and a hard date just simply means, you know, if I'm looking at a 12-month timeline, then I'm going to put April 20th of 2027. So on and so forth. So make sure you don't put, you know, 6 to 12 months or 6 months. Make sure you put an actual date in there. All right, computation period of days. This says if a deadline should fall on a weekend or holiday, will it or will it not proceed to the next business day? You know, this is going to be more applicable when it comes to a contract, but there is only one date in here, and that's these dates here. So personally, you should probably be aware of what dates you're putting in here. Whether it is going to fall on a weekend or a holiday. But when in doubt, I say fill out your stuff the way that you constantly do it. And I'm a will person. And so some of you might be a will not type of person. Just make sure you read this and understand, because for me, I want, if I accidentally mess up and put a date on a weekend or a holiday, I'm usually probably not looking to work real hard on those days, because I like my R&R. I like to make sure I work hard when I'm working, and on weekends and holidays, I like to, you know, kick back and recharge. So I'm a will person. I just want them to extend to the next business day. Some of you might have a different opinion, and so figure that out on your own. Like I said, there's not a lot in some of these sections, so we're just going to skip over some of section 4 and look right at this section right here, buyer's agency only. The only time that you would ever really need to select this box is going to be in rare situations. But let me give you some of those rare situations, because outside of the 2 that I'm about to mention, there's really not a whole lot of rhyme or reason for needing to select this box. So if I'm a buyer, or I'm sorry, if I'm working with myself as a buyer, right? I'm a licensee, so I need a house to live. Sometimes I'm buying my own property. Maybe you're a licensee looking to buy an investment property. If you're using your license to represent yourself on the purchase of a property, you can only be a buyer's agent for yourself. There's no way that you could be and play a neutral or non-biased game with another agent or another seller, because you're representing yourself. Of course, you're going to want the outcome into your best interest and your favor. And so you would never be able to be a transaction broker, because a transaction broker would mean that you're playing a neutral party in the transaction. And that's just not going to be possible if it's you who's actually buying the property. So in that situation, you would select this checkbox. Ooh, look at that. There is no checkbox here. So whenever you find that there's no field here, I'm not sure if I click something, but you can go up here, click, and you can actually drag a checkbox. Oops, checkbox. You can actually drag a checkbox right where you need it to. So if you do see a field that maybe you accidentally deleted, I don't know if I did, or that was part of what I need to maybe work on. But if there's ever a checkbox that's not where you need it to be, ever a text box, you can go ahead and click text, drag and drop it. You can do a checkbox, same, so on and so forth. And you'll see when you learn more about the system, you can add signatures and all that. But again, for today's videos, we're just looking at how to fill this out. So that would be if I'm representing myself. The other way that you need to remain a buyer's agent, and you will only ever be a buyer's agent, would be a direct relation to you. Now, I'm not talking about direct blood, although that's definitely included, right? If I'm working with my parents, if I'm working with my, hopefully when my daughter gets older, she'll buy a house. if I'm working with my wife, if I'm working with anybody in my household, let's say I'm having my nephew live in the basement, I would absolutely only be able to be a buyer's agent for somebody so close to me. You wouldn't be able to have a neutral party. I think this stems also into the, rationale around a best friend. I have a couple of friends in my life that are very near and dear to my heart, and there's no way that I would be able to be a neutral party with them because I want to see them win. So that would be the only other situation, is you working with yourself, or you would only be a buyer's agent if you're working with a direct relation to you that you can never be a neutral party with. So for the most part, that box is going to be left unchecked, and we're going to move on. Like I said, there's not a lot of things to fill out in sections 5 and 6. This is just talking about your broker's duties. Make sure you read through there. 5 and 6 is just, I think, very eye-opening to agents that get a license, never read through that, and then start to actually read through that and really realize all the things that we need to do for our clients and why our fees are our fees. So speaking of fees, let's slow down to section 7. Let me make sure I explain this in full detail. And if you have any clarification, if you need any clarification, just let me know. First and foremost, anytime there's a left-hand checkbox when it comes to any of these sections, you need to select the ones that are applicable. So if you put your fee in here, and I'm not going to use numbers. I don't want to price fix. I'm very conscientious of what our world of real estate says we can and cannot do. And I know that there will be people that watch this video outside of our brokerage firm, and that's perfectly fine. So make sure you understand what you need to be charging somebody. And if you don't know, please reach out to your broker at your office. If you're with our office, you can reach out to me and I can throw out some suggestions and some things that, I commonly do, and some averages that we'll talk about in the industry. But for the most part, that's where you're going to put it. And so if you notice, if you do not select this checkbox, we're at the understanding that that buyer would actually never owe you that fee. You may not get paid on the deal. So in order to make this clause applicable, you're going to go ahead and select that checkbox. So put your total commission in here. This is for if you're charging a flat rate. If you're charging a flat rate, you're probably getting into a scenario which would need to call me anyways. So most of the time, this is where your percentage will be. I think for the most part, the majority of us agents, we do not use anything else in here besides section 7.1.4. And that would be where if you're charging a buyer some sort of outside of a percentage fee. And I know it's different than this flat rate over here, because this is for the compensation. This would be, well, I guess this says other compensation, but this is used for what I would consider an admin fee. You also can see a transaction coordinator fee, as some people use. I like the term document retention fee. So on and so forth. Just make sure you spell out exactly what the fee is being used for and make sure it's legitimate. You cannot have an admin fee of, say, $5,000, because in our industry, an administration fee or a TC fee, you'll never ever see that type of fee. So this fee needs to be applicable to what we consider market pricing. And market pricing right now, I see anywhere between some of these fees being $200 all the way up to about I think like $795. So I'll go ahead and put $800 for the sake of the video, but I think I've seen $795 before, which is, it's getting up there with some of these fees. But if it's justified, it's justified. And I am a big proponent of you getting your fair share. Moving on. So like I said, I wanted to slow down and really make sure you guys all understand this, because I think a lot of times in our industry, especially as a new agent, you're coming in here thinking, oh yeah, on the buy side, I get paid from the listing side. Well, that's true in a lot of situations, but I need you to slow down and understand how that actually works. And so if we keep going, who will pay the brokerage firm? If you take a look here, section 731 and 732 does not say sellers obligated to pay. It actually says in 732, the buyer will pay. So in a rare instance where your buyer is absolutely going to be the one to pay you, you're going to select 732. For the majority of the time that you're working with a buyer, you're going to be selecting 731, and I really need you to see this loud and clear. Seller's brokerage firm or seller may pay. Buyer's obligated to pay. So what this says is, hey, buyer, this is an agreement for you to pay me, but the selling brokerage or the seller might pay. But if they don't pay, you're on the hook for whatever my total amount is up here, plus this other compensation fee. Oh, and by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this other compensation fee probably is not going to be paid for by the seller. So that's definitely going to be something that you pay me. But when it comes to looking at properties, I want to make sure we look at some properties in which the seller would be paying my fee. Because if the seller pays, then you're not going to actually be obligated to pay if they're paying the total amount. So as you guys can see, I'm giving you guys some scripts. I'm giving you guys some best practice. But I would say, 99.999% of the time, you're going to be using 731. Holdover period, if you're using a holdover period, again, if you don't know what a holdover period is, read through here, ask me questions. But if you're using one, I like to say the rule of thumb for me is about 90 days. You can use 30 days, you can use 60 days, you can use 90, 120. You can use a weird number like, 68 days, 72 days. But a holdover period just states how long, some of this stuff is some of these duties and all of these things are going to last if you're the procuring cause of a buyer's potential property. If I'm charging or I'm enacting a holdover period with a certain day, then I'm absolutely saying that the buyer will owe a compensation if I need to enact this clause. Buyer's obligation to broker. Buyer is not and has not currently been working with another agent. If you need to select anything other than is not and has not, you're probably in a rare situation. So give me a call. There's obviously situations out there that would deem we need to select is and has. But for the sake of the normal way of doing business, you're probably working with buyers who are not in that situation. So moving on, not a whole lot else in this contract. There's a few things down here. So let's take a look at section 14.2, showing properties. Buyer acknowledges that buyer has explained the possible methods used by the seller's brokers and sellers to show properties. So this is saying, hey, look, buyer, there's limitations to when we can see properties because this is kind of up to the seller and when the seller wants to see it. And let's keep reading. And the limitations on buyer and buyer broker being able to access those properties due to such methods. So I said that already. It's up to the seller when they allow us to get in there. So brokers' limitations on accessing properties are as follows. So what are your limitations on showing properties? For me, it's, no showings before 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Something like that. That's a great example. I'm just going to go ahead and use that as an example. This isn't something you have to put in yours, but that's a good example of maybe your limitations. That would be my limitations. And then let's read this last part. Broker, through the broker's firm, has the access to the following multiple listing services and property information services. Who are you subscribed to? Are you an IRIS user? Are you maybe an RE Colorado user? So go ahead and put the MLS that you are with and move on. Disclose the buyer's identity. Buyer does or does not grant the broker permission to disclose the buyer's identity. Most of the time, your buyers are probably going to be using their actual names on their documents, and so I think that buyer would, grant that access. Title company needs to know their name for documents, this and that. But if you're working with a celebrity or you're working with, somebody in the government services, sometimes they use aliases. When Walmart buys a property, they're definitely not going to allow you to disclose their identity. So they buy a property with some erroneous, LLC, and then they transition into that name after they've already, bought the property. So that way the public eye doesn't know. So in rare situations, you're going to want to select does not. In a lot of situations, you're probably perfectly fine selecting does. But as you can see, there's an option, and you should probably have that conversation with your buyer. All right, from there, I believe that's about it. I guess we'll go over a couple of these blanks. Attachments, there's probably not a whole lot of attaching anything to this document. If you're getting into that realm, again, you're probably in a special situation, so go ahead and reach out. Happy to help. Electronic notice, you would maybe, if you want, you can put Bold Trail signing software. You can put DocuSign signing software, SkySlope. There's all sorts of different contract pages out there in which you can obtain delivery through electronic notice or signatures. And so you can put that in there. And then from there, it's your buyer's signature. I don't actually put my buyer's street information, phone number, email address probably, and my buyer's name. I mean, outside of that, all the rest of this stuff should be in their contact card, so I leave that blank. And then obviously you're going to have your information here. Make sure you fill all of that out. Your buyer does need to know where the brokerage firm is, the brokerage firm's number. You can leave fax number. We're probably done using that, but there is one out there. I can't remember off the top of my head. But that's about it, guys. So as far as this video goes, thanks for watching. And one of the things that I'll do right now, and I'll just do it in real time, I guess, is I'm going to download this so that way I can send out this video with the template. So that way, those of you that want to watch the video can watch the video, and those of you that get sick of listening to my voice can absolutely, just look at a template. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day, and please reach out if you have any other questions.